Hi, automotive enthusiasts. Welcome to Boost Bureau, where today we're diving into one of the most legendary stories in American performance history, the 1970 Ford Mustang Boss 302 and its championship run in the brutal, high-stakes world of Trans Am racing. This isn't just a tale about a car. It's about how a company, a team of engineers, and a group of determined racers turned a showroom pony into a track-conquering thoroughbred at a time when Detroit was locked in one of the fiercest rivalries motorsport has ever seen. If you've ever wondered how the Mustang became more than just a popular street car, how it became a true motorsport icon, this is the journey you'll want to follow. In the late 1960s, the American muscle car market was white-hot, with every manufacturer scrambling to outdo the others in horsepower and swagger. But while quarter-mile bragging rights grabbed headlines, a different kind of battle was taking shape on road courses across the United States. The Sports Car Club of America's Trans-American Sedan Championship, known simply as Trans Am, had become the arena where manufacturers could prove not just raw power, but handling, endurance, and all-around performance. Winning there wasn't just about trophies. It was about convincing buyers that your car was the one to beat. Chevrolet had the Camaro Z, Dodge had the Challenger, AMC had the Javelin, and Ford knew it needed something special to carry the Mustang into that fight. Out of this pressure cooker came the Boss 302, a machine built to homologate Ford's racing ambitions. Its high-revving small-block V8 wasn't about brute torque but razor-sharp response. Its suspension was tuned for precision rather than comfort. Even its aggressive bodywork with spoilers and stripes signaled that this wasn't just another pony car, it was a weapon. But the question was, could it actually win? Because standing in its way were Roger Penske's ruthlessly efficient Camaro team, Bud Moore's deep well of racing experience, and a roster of drivers who would risk everything to bring glory to their badges. Over the next hour, we're going to explore three intertwined chapters of this story. First, we'll uncover how Ford developed the Boss 302 and why it mattered so much at that moment. Then, we'll dive into the intense 1970 Trans Am season itself, a war of attrition, strategy, and grit that pushed teams and drivers to the breaking point. Finally, we'll look at the legacy of the Boss 302, how its championship not only changed the reputation of the Mustang, but also left a cultural mark that still echoes today. So buckle up, because this isn't just nostalgia. It's the story of how an American icon earned its stripes in the heat of real competition, and why, half a century later, the 1970 Boss 302 remains one of the most celebrated Mustangs ever built. Let's get into it. Ford's path to the Boss 302 championship didn't begin with a finished car. It began with a challenge. By the late 1960s, the Trans Am series had become the sharp edge of the American performance wars, and Chevrolet's Camaro Z had set the benchmark, with Penske's race team dominating headlines. For Ford, the Mustang was selling incredibly well, but the brand wanted credibility beyond sales numbers. Winning on Sunday still meant selling on Monday, and nothing would prove Mustang's worth like a championship against the fiercest rivals in the nation. The idea for a small-block road racing Mustang was born from that determination. Micro-story. The creation of the Boss 302 was as much about office politics as it was about horsepower. In 1968, Ford executive Seaman Bunky Knudsen brought stylist Larry Shinoda into the Mustang program after both had worked at General Motors. Shinoda insisted that Ford needed a street car tied directly to its racing effort, both for homologation and marketing. What emerged was a Mustang that wore a bold blacked-out hood, C-stripes, and spoilers designed not just for looks, but to satisfy aerodynamic rules. The Boss name wasn't a marketing brainstorm, but Shinoda's tongue-in-cheek reference to Knudsen, his boss. This mix of corporate maneuvering and racing ambition gave the car an identity long before it ever turned a wheel in anger. Context digest. Homologation rules in Trans Am required that race cars be based on production models. Manufacturers couldn't just build prototypes, they had to sell what they raced. This meant Ford had to make at least 1,000 street-legal Boss 302 Mustangs available to the public, each packing the specialized 302 cubic inch engine that could handle high RPM while still being production legal. For customers, this was a unique opportunity to buy a car that shared its DNA directly with the championship machine. For Ford, it was the price of entry into the most competitive racing series in America. Micro story. Under the hood, the Boss 302 wasn't just another small block. Engineers combined the thin wall block of the Ford Windsor engine with cylinder heads borrowed from the Cleveland family, creating an unusual hybrid that breathed better at high RPM. This meant the engine could spin to 7,000 or even 8,000 RPM. When tuned for racing, something unheard of for most American V8s of the era, which emphasized low-end torque. The result was a motor that felt alive on road courses, where top-end power and responsiveness mattered far more than drag strip launches. It was technical innovation tailored to the specific demands of Trans Am. Reflection bridge. What Ford built in the Boss 302 was not just another muscle car. It was a street-going race car designed to conquer corners. That distinction set the stage for the next challenge, turning potential into victories. Micro story. The 1969 Trans Am season was the Boss 302's baptism by fire. Bud Moore's team was responsible for fielding the factory-backed cars, and drivers like Parnelli Jones brought talent and aggression to the table. But success didn't come easily. The car showed flashes of speed, yet struggled with reliability and teething problems against Penske's seasoned Camaro squad. For Ford, 1969 was a year of frustration, where lessons had to be learned the hard way. Every mechanical failure, every lost race, forced engineers and mechanics to refine the car. It became clear that 1970 would have to be the year everything came together, or risk ceding the field to Chevrolet permanently. Context digest. The competitive environment of Trans Am racing was ruthless. Chevrolet's Penske team exploited rules with ingenuity, famously using acid-dipped body panels to lighten cars while still appearing stock. AMC was ramping up its efforts with the Javelin, and Dodge was testing the waters with the Challenger. Each brand wanted the marketing edge of a Trans Am title, and budgets swelled as the stakes rose. For Ford, this was not just about prestige. It was about defending Mustang's crown as America's performance car of choice in a crowded marketplace. Micro story. In preparation for 1970, Ford and Bud Moore's crew poured resources into refining the Boss 302. Chassis balance improved, the suspension was tuned for stability over long races, and the race engines were given relentless attention to handle the strain of hours at redline. Drivers like Parnelli Jones and George Follmer were pushed to master every nuance of the car. Testing sessions became grueling marathons, as the team knew that one mechanical weakness could cost them a championship. This wasn't just engineering, it was war preparation. Reflection bridge. By the time the 1970 season dawned, Ford wasn't simply entering cars. It was unleashing weapons honed through failure and forged by necessity. The stage was set for one of the most dramatic showdowns in racing history. Context digest. The marketing side of Ford understood the gravity of what was happening. Advertisements for the Boss 302 emphasized its direct connection to racing, highlighting its spoilers, stripes, and high-winding engine as proof of competition pedigree. Buyers were told they could own a piece of Trans Am technology, and dealers used the buzz to draw in young performance-hungry customers. The car wasn't just a tool for winning on track. It was a centerpiece for Ford's image campaign during a time when youth culture and speed were tightly linked. Micro story. Away from the headlines, grassroots racers also took notice. Because homologation required street versions to be sold, privateers could buy Boss 302s and enter them in local events. While they didn't have the resources of Bud Moore's factory team, the cars themselves were capable, and many weekend racers found themselves driving machines that felt like little more than detuned Trans Am cars. This democratization of racing technology helped spread the Mustang legend even further, making the Boss 302 not just a factory halo car, but a grassroots hero. Micro story. Rivalries added to the tension. Parnelli Jones versus Mark Donohue became a storyline that electrified fans, each representing their brand with fearless driving. Jones was brash and aggressive, Donohue methodical and calculating, and every race seemed to pit not just machines but philosophies against one another. Fans packed stands to witness these duels, knowing that what unfolded on the track was shaping the destiny of their favorite muscle cars in the showroom. This wasn't abstract, it was personal for the audience. As the green flag fell on the 1970 Trans Am season, the Boss 302 carried more than horsepower under its hood. It carried the weight of Ford's reputation, the expectations of thousands of enthusiasts, and the determination of a company unwilling to play second fiddle to Chevrolet. Every lap from here forward would count, and the battles ahead would test not just engineering, but courage, strategy, and endurance. And that is where the heart of this saga truly begins. The 1970 Trans Am season opened with a sense of urgency. Ford had invested heavily in refining the Boss 302, and Bud Moore's team arrived at the track prepared for a fight that would last all year. From the first race, it was clear this wouldn't be a casual contest. Every weekend felt like a clash of titans, with Ford and Chevrolet throwing their best machinery and best drivers into the fray. Parnelli Jones took the wheel of the Boss 302 like a man possessed, his aggressive style turning every lap into a spectacle. George Follmer complimented him with consistency, giving Ford the 1-2 punch it needed to fight on multiple fronts. Micro story. The season's early rounds set the tone. At Laguna Seca, Jones demonstrated the sheer ferocity of the Boss 302, sliding the car through corners in a way that thrilled crowds and intimidated rivals. The Mustang wasn't always the fastest down the straights, but its balance through the turns allowed Jones to keep pressure on the Camaros lap after lap. Donahue's Camaro, meanwhile, used strategy and pit precision to counter Ford's raw aggression. The result was a season opener that felt like a prize fight, blow for blow, setting up a narrative where neither side would back down. Context. Digest: Trans Am races weren't short sprints. They were grueling events that tested man and machine over extended distances. Reliability mattered as much as outright speed. Engines had to survive hours at redline, brakes had to endure punishing stops, and suspensions had to cope with bumpy circuits. Teams like Bud Moore's couldn't just build a fast car, they had to build one that would last under relentless stress. This made every race a gamble between pushing hard enough to win and preserving the machinery to finish. Micro story. At Lime Rock, Jones put on one of his most famous performances. Despite the short, twisting track demanding constant gear changes and precision braking, the Boss 302 showed its agility. Jones muscled the car with his trademark bravado, taking risks that left fans breathless and officials nervous. His victory there wasn't just about points, it was about sending a message. Ford wasn't here to participate, it was here to dominate. But every win also raised the stakes, making Chevrolet even more determined to strike back. Reflection bridge. The rivalry wasn't just about lap times, it was about psychology, with each side using victories to rattle the other. That mental war carried into every pit lane and every headline. Micro story. Mid-season brought one of the year's most intense showdowns at Riverside. Donahue and Jones locked into a wheel-to-wheel battle that pushed both cars to their limits. For lap after lap, they traded the lead, their contrasting driving styles on full display. The Boss 302's raw tenacity and Jones's fearless corner. Entries clashed with Donahue's smooth, calculated lines. Spectators weren't just watching a race, they were witnessing a duel that embodied the entire Ford versus Chevrolet conflict. When Jones edged out the win, it cemented his reputation as the gladiator of Trans Am. Context digest. Factory support in Trans Am was unlike anything else in American racing at the time. Chevrolet, Ford, AMC, and Chrysler were pouring resources into a series that, on paper, wasn't supposed to be about big budgets. What began as a relatively affordable sedan racing league had morphed into a high-tech arms race, with manufacturers bending rules, developing experimental parts, and treating every event as a full-scale campaign. The stakes had risen beyond trophies. This was corporate pride played out at 150 miles per hour. Microstory. One of the turning points came at Watkins Glen. Ford's strategy emphasized not just Jones's aggression, but also Follmer's steady ability to rack up points. While Jones battled for wins, Follmer often played the long game, ensuring Ford's overall tally remained strong even when fortune didn't favor the lead car. This balance between fire and ice gave Ford an edge Chevrolet struggled to counter. In a championship decided by accumulated points, every consistent finish mattered as much as a dramatic victory. Reflection bridge. By late summer, the Boss 302 wasn't just a contender, it was the car to beat, and Ford knew the championship was within reach. But with the title on the line, pressure mounted, and the risks grew sharper. Microstory. The race at Road America highlighted those risks. Jones, never one to hold back, pushed the Boss 302 to its absolute limits, sometimes skating the edge of disaster. Fans loved the spectacle, but every sideways moment risked a mechanical failure or worse. Moore's crew worked overtime to keep the car alive, patching issues that could have sidelined lesser efforts. The image of Jones muscling the Mustang through Elkhart Lake's sweeping corners became iconic, a picture of determination that would define the season. Context Digest. Behind the spectacle, Trans Am was exacting a toll on budgets, crews, and drivers. Mechanics often worked around the clock, patching engines, replacing suspensions, and coaxing battered cars back into fighting shape. Series wasn't glamorous in the pits. It was grueling labor, fueled by passion and corporate expectation. Ford's deep pockets kept Bud Moore's team supplied, but even then, every weekend was a test of endurance. That reality underscored how much was riding on the Boss 302's performance. Microstory. As the championship neared its climax, the tension reached a boiling point. At Kent, Washington, the season effectively became a showdown for the title. Every point mattered, every lap could swing the outcome. Jones drove with reckless brilliance, pushing himself and the car beyond what seemed sustainable. Against the backdrop of Penske's precision, it was a clash of styles, philosophies, and fortunes. The Mustang crossed the line not just as a winner, but as a champion, securing Ford the 1970 Trans Am title by the narrowest of margins. The victory was as much about grit as engineering, the culmination of a campaign where nothing was left on the table. Microstory. That championship wasn't just another trophy. For Ford, it was proof that the Mustang could beat Chevrolet on the most demanding stage in American motorsport. For fans, it was vindication that their favorite pony car wasn't just a fashion statement, but a legitimate race-bred machine. And for Parnelli Jones, it was a season that would cement his reputation as one of the fiercest drivers of his generation. The Boss 302 had done what it was built to do: bring the fight, take the title, and etch itself into history. The season closed with Ford on top, but the story of the Boss 302 didn't end at the finish line. Its legacy would ripple far beyond the championship year, influencing the Mustang's reputation, shaping muscle car culture, and creating a collector's icon whose legend only grew with time. And that's where the next chapter begins, with the lasting impact of this car and the era it defined. When the dust settled after the 1970 Trans Am season, the Boss 302 had done more than win a championship. It had rewritten what people thought a Mustang could be. No longer was the car just a symbol of affordable performance for the masses. It was now a proven race winner, a machine with credibility earned in the crucible of competition. That victory shifted the Mustang's identity from showroom sensation to motorsport icon, and the cultural waves it created are still felt today. Microstory. In the immediate aftermath, Ford celebrated the championship with bold advertising campaigns, proudly proclaiming the Mustang as the car that beat Chevrolet on the track. Dealers showcased Boss 302s as rolling evidence of Ford's dominance, and enthusiasts flocked to buy them. Yet, ironically, 1970 would be the final year of Ford's all-in factory Trans Am effort. Rising costs, tightening regulations, and shifting corporate priorities meant the Boss 302's reign as a factory-backed warrior was brief. That fleeting nature only amplified its mystique, making the 1970 car a singular, almost mythical presence in Mustang history. Context Digest. By 1971, the Trans Am series was changing. Engine rules shifted, the budgets became unsustainable, and manufacturer enthusiasm cooled. The golden age of the pony car battles began to wane, but the legend of 1970 remained, untarnished. For enthusiasts, the Boss 302 became the shorthand for when Ford stood toe-to-toe with Chevrolet and came out on top. Its scarcity and singular triumph ensured its value would only rise in collector circles. Micro-story. In the decades that followed, the Boss 302 became a sought-after treasure. Collectors scoured barns and garages for surviving examples, restoring them to glory. At auctions, pristine Boss 302s commanded eye-watering prices, not just because of their rarity, but because of what they represented. Owning one wasn't just owning a car, it was owning a slice of American motorsport history, a tangible connection to the roaring battles of 1970. Every restored example told not just a personal story, but also the larger tale of an era when Detroit fought for supremacy on racetracks as fiercely as in showrooms. Reflection Bridge. The nostalgia surrounding the Boss 302 wasn't just about sheet metal and horsepower. It was about the emotions and identity tied to a moment when America's muscle cars proved themselves in the toughest arena. Micro story. The legend even inspired Ford decades later. In 2012, the company revived the Boss 302 nameplate for a modern Mustang, explicitly linking it to the 1970 champion. The new version came with a high-revving V8, track-focused suspension, and even a Laguna Seca edition named after Parnelli Jones's iconic Victory. While it was built with modern safety and emission standards, the spirit was unmistakable. Road car bred for the track, just like its ancestor. The revival wasn't just a marketing move, it was a cultural callback, proof that the shadow of 1970 still loomed large in Ford's imagination. Context Digest. The continued relevance of the Boss 302 speaks to the broader cultural power of racing heritage. For many enthusiasts, performance credibility isn't about numbers on a spec sheet, it's about stories of triumph and struggle. The Boss 302 embodies that narrative. It's not remembered solely because of horsepower or styling, but because of the way it fought, the rivalries it defined, and the season it conquered. That kind of legacy transcends specifications and places the car in the realm of legend. Micro story. Today, when enthusiasts gather at shows, rallies, or vintage races, a Boss 302 draws crowds like few others. People lean in close to hear the distinctive exhaust note, study the stripes and spoilers, and imagine what it must have been like to see Jones hurling one through Riverside or Watkins Glen. Younger fans, born long after 1970, feel the pull of that history as if they lived it. The car isn't just metal and paint, it's a living artifact, a time machine that carries the spirit of an era when racing mattered deeply to Detroit and to the public. Reflection Bridge. What began as a calculated gamble by Ford executives had grown into something much larger, a lasting symbol of passion, rivalry, and victory. Micro story. Even in pop culture, the Boss 302 holds a special aura. It has appeared in films, video games, and countless magazine features, always framed as one of the most desirable Mustangs of all time. Unlike other performance cars that faded into obscurity, the Boss 302's story has only grown sharper with retelling. Its image is tied not just to style, but to conquest, to a moment when Mustang stood at the peak of competition. That narrative power keeps the car relevant, ensuring it remains both a collector's jewel and an enthusiast's dream. Context Digest. The importance of 1970s Trans Am victory extends beyond Ford or even the Mustang. It represents an era when American manufacturers believed in proving themselves through real racing, when factory teams invested millions to win not just hearts but headlines. That spirit faded as regulations and economics changed, but the Boss 302 keeps it alive in memory. It's a benchmark that reminds us what was possible when innovation, risk, and determination collided. Micro story. For many enthusiasts, driving a Boss 302 today is as much about feeling history as it is about enjoying performance. The steering, the way the engine climbs eagerly to redline, the sense of balance. It all tells the driver they are in a car built with a singular purpose. Even at casual speeds, it carries the ghost of Parnelli Jones charging into corners, the echo of crowds roaring at Riverside, the determination of Ford's engineers sweating in garages. Every mile is a reminder of what it means to drive a car forged in the fire of true competition. The Boss 302's legacy is one of triumph earned, of cultural resonance that outlived the short span of its factory career. It stands as proof that sometimes one season, one machine, and one victory can shape an identity for generations. For Ford, for the Mustang, and for automotive enthusiasts everywhere, the 1970 Boss 302 is not just history, it's heritage, and that heritage remains alive every time its name is spoken or its engine roars to life. The story of the 1970 Boss 302 Mustang is a reminder of how racing, culture, and engineering can collide to create something larger than the sum of its parts. It began as a corporate decision to fight Chevrolet and Trans Am, but what emerged was a car that transcended business strategy and became a living legend. The Boss 302 wasn't just another Mustang variant. It was the moment the Mustang earned its stripes as a genuine motorsport hero, built not only for the street, but for the crucible of the track. That transformation mattered then, and it matters now. Looking back, it's striking how fleeting its official career was. Ford's full-throttle support lasted essentially one season, yet that single championship cemented the car's status for generations. It shows how decisive moments, executed with total commitment, can outweigh years of mediocrity. The Boss 302 didn't have a decade-long run, but its short, blazing glory left a bigger mark than most long-lived models ever could. That brevity gave it a mythic quality, like a comet flashing across the sky. What endures most is the feeling, the eye. Car-inspired. For fans in 1970, seeing a Mustang beat a Camaro in front of their eyes was validation that their favorite brand could win where it mattered most. For drivers like Parnelli Jones, it was the thrill of racing on the ragged edge with a machine that answered every command. For Ford's engineers, it was proof their design choices worked under the harshest scrutiny. And for us today, it's a story that connects enthusiasts across generations, reminding us why these machines are more than metal. If you encounter a Boss 302 now, whether at a concours event, a vintage race, or even tucked away in someone's garage, it carries the weight of that history. The stripes, the spoiler, the roar of that high-revving V8, they're not just design details, they're echoes of 1970, when a car and a team defied the odds and claimed glory. It's a piece of rolling history that still has the power to inspire. That's why the Boss 302's legacy endures. It's not nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. It's the enduring appeal of a story where determination, rivalry, and innovation fused into a moment of triumph. It reminds us that cars are cultural touchstones, binding us together through the stories they tell and the emotions they evoke. Thanks for riding with us on Boost Bureau. See you next time, automotive enthusiasts.